The CEO who bet her company on the janitor. Veronica Hale stood in the center of her aerospace hangar, watching $28 million of her career circle the drain. The Phoenix MH7 prototype, her last shot at keeping her board seat, sat grounded while engineers argued and phones recorded everything. She was seconds from becoming a viral disaster. Then her eyes landed on the old man pushing a mop bucket, invisible as furniture, and desperation made her vicious. "You!" she shouted. "Think you can fly it? Do it and I'll marry you." The hangar erupted in laughter, until the janitor said, "Put it in writing. Before we begin, if you love stories about hidden strength, second chances, and the people the world refuses to see, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels." Now let's dive in. The morning Veronica Hale's world began to crumble started like every other power play she'd ever won, with her heels clicking against polished concrete and everyone scrambling to get out of her way. She strode through the main entrance of Hale Aerospace Systems at 6:47 a.m., 17 minutes earlier than her usual arrival, because the preliminary test flight reports had hit her inbox at 4:30 and she hadn't slept since. Her assistant, Marcus, practically jogged to keep pace, his tablet glowing with the damage assessment she already had memorized. "The hydraulics are still showing instability," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Chen wants to ground the Phoenix indefinitely. Peterson's calling for a complete redesign of the fly-by-wire system, and the board meeting is in 9 days," Veronica finished. She didn't slow down. "Where's Reynolds?" "Test Bay 3. He's been there since midnight." "Of course he has." Veronica's jaw tightened. Derek Reynolds, her chief engineer, was brilliant and thorough and entirely too honest for his own good. If he'd been there all night, it meant he'd found something worse than hydraulics. The facility sprawled across 42 acres of California industrial parkland, but Veronica knew every inch of it. She'd built this company from a garage operation to a legitimate competitor for military contracts, and the Phoenix MH7 was supposed to be her masterpiece. A next-generation attack helicopter that could outmaneuver anything in the sky. Light, fast, lethal, and loaded with innovations that would revolutionize combat aviation. Except it wouldn't fly right. And in 9 days, the board of directors, half of whom wanted her replaced with someone more stable, which was code for male, would vote on whether to kill the project entirely, which meant killing her tenure as CEO, which meant everything she'd sacrificed, every midnight hour and missed wedding and burned friendship would amount to exactly nothing. The test bay doors were open when she arrived. Inside, the Phoenix MH7 sat like a predatory bird, all sleek angles and matte black composite plating. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it looked like an expensive mistake. Derek Reynolds stood beneath the main rotor assembly, his gray hair standing up in stressed peaks, his eyes red-rimmed behind wire-frame glasses. When he saw Veronica approaching, he didn't bother with pleasantries. "The control system is compensating incorrectly," he said. "Every time the pilot inputs a command, there's a fractional delay before the aircraft responds. 0.3 seconds. It's not much, but in combat conditions, it's fatal," Veronica finished. "Can you fix it?" Derek's silence was answer enough. "How long?" she pressed. 6 months? Maybe 8? We'd need to rework the entire interface architecture, recalibrate the fiber optic responses, run new simulations. We don't have 6 months. We don't have 6 weeks. Then we don't have a solution. Derek met her eyes. "Veronica, this aircraft isn't ready. If you push it to demonstration before we solve this, someone's going to get hurt. Or killed. If I don't push it to demonstration, the board kills the program and 300 people lose their jobs." Veronica's voice was sharp enough to cut. "Including you. I'd rather be unemployed than responsible for a pilot's death." It was the right answer, the moral answer. And Veronica hated him for it because she didn't have the luxury of being right. She had to be effective. "Keep working," she said. "Find me something." She turned and walked away before Derek could argue further. Marcus trailed behind her, tablet still glowing with bad news. "The Wall Street Journal is running a piece tomorrow," he said quietly. "About the delays, they're calling the Phoenix Hale's folly." "Creative," Veronica said flatly. "Reuters picked it up. So did Defense News. Let them write what they want. When we fly this thing, they'll be writing retractions." "If we fly it." Veronica stopped walking, turned. looked at Marcus with the full weight of 15 years of command decisions behind her eyes. "We will fly it this week, and it will be perfect." Marcus swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." But as Veronica continued through the facility, past engineers who avoided eye contact and technicians who suddenly found their workstations fascinating, she felt the truth settling into her bones like cold water. She was losing control. Not just of the project, of everything. The board, the press, the narrative. She'd spent her entire career building a reputation for being unshakable, and now she could feel it all slipping through her fingers like sand. By 10:30 a.m., the situation had deteriorated further. Chen, her lead test pilot, refused to fly the Phoenix until the control lag was resolved. 2 other pilots backed him up. The engineering team was deadlocked on solutions, and her phone wouldn't stop ringing with reporters, investors, and board members who all wanted to know the same thing. Was Hale Aerospace about to become a cautionary tale? By 2:00 p.m., Veronica was standing in her corner office, 30 floors above the test facility, looking out at the sprawl of buildings and runways that represented everything she'd built. Her reflection stared back from the glass. A woman in her late 40s, dark hair pulled into a ruthless bun, suit sharp enough to draw blood, eyes that had forgotten how to soften. Her phone buzzed. Another board member. She ignored it. Then Marcus knocked and entered without waiting for permission, which meant catastrophe. "James Whitmore just called," he said. "He's bringing the entire board out tomorrow morning. He wants to see the Phoenix fly, or he's calling for an emergency vote to terminate the program." Veronica's blood went cold. James Whitmore was the board chairman and her most vocal opponent. He'd been trying to force her out since she'd rejected his son for a senior engineering position 3 years ago. This was his move, his checkmate. "He can't do that," she said. "He absolutely can. You know the contract terms. If the Phoenix doesn't demonstrate viability by the deadline, the board has the authority to shut it down and remove executive leadership. We need more time." "We don't have it." Marcus hesitated. "Veronica, maybe we should consider, but—" "Don't." Her voice was ice. "Don't say we should quit. I was going to say maybe we should be strategic, acknowledge the delays, propose a revised timeline, show humility. Humility doesn't win defense contracts. Performance does. But if we can't perform, then I'll find someone who can." Veronica grabbed her phone in her jacket. "Get me a list of every pilot within 100 miles who has combat helicopter experience and a death wish. Someone crazy enough to fly an unstable aircraft in front of cameras and confident enough to make it look easy." Marcus stared at her. "You're serious? Do I look like I'm joking?" "Veronica, even if you found someone willing, the liability alone is my problem. Make the calls." She left him standing there and headed back down to the facility, driven by something beyond logic now. Desperation, maybe, or pride, or the simple refusal to let James Whitmore win. The hangar floor was chaos when she arrived. Tomorrow's demonstration had been announced internally, and everyone was scrambling to prepare, cleaning the aircraft, setting up observation platforms, arranging camera positions for the press coverage Veronica had already scheduled despite having no one to fly the damn thing. She walked through it all like a general surveying a battlefield, projecting confidence she didn't feel, answering questions with authority she barely maintained. And that's when she saw him, the janitor. He was older, late 60s, maybe 70, with steel gray hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades lived outdoors. He wore the standard maintenance uniform, faded blue with a name patch that said Grant, and he was pushing a mop bucket across the hangar floor with the slow, methodical movements of someone who'd long ago become invisible to everyone around him. Veronica had seen him before, of course. He'd been part of the maintenance crew for years, but she'd never actually looked at him. Why would she? He was furniture. Background. The kind of person who existed to keep spaces clean and then disappear. But now, watching him navigate around engineers and equipment with patient efficiency, something in Veronica's exhausted, desperate brain sparked. An idea. Terrible. Brilliant. Probably insane. She walked toward him. The janitor, Grant, didn't notice her approach at first. He was focused on his work, methodically cleaning the floor around the Phoenix's landing gear. Up close, Veronica could see the details. Calloused hands, permanent grease stains under his fingernails, shoulders that had been strong once and still carried themselves with surprising straightness. "You," she said. He looked up, startled, met her eyes for just a second before looking away, deferential. "Ma'am? You work here every day?" "Yes, ma'am, 8 years now." "So you've seen the Phoenix, watched it being built?" "I suppose I have." His voice was careful, neutral, the voice of someone who'd learned long ago not to offer opinions. "Do you know what it is?" "Attack helicopter, ma'am. Next generation. Supposed to be faster than anything else in its class." He paused. "If it flies right." The last part was said so quietly, Veronica almost missed it. She studied him more carefully. There was something in his eyes, just a flicker, that suggested more than he was saying. And then, because she was desperate and furious and completely out of options, Veronica made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She raised her voice, loud enough for everyone in the hangar to hear. "You think you could fly it?" The hangar didn't go silent all at once. It was more gradual, conversations trailing off, people turning, the slow realization that something strange was happening. Grant looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "Ma'am? I asked if you think you could fly the Phoenix." Veronica pitched her voice even louder now, aware of phones being pulled out, of cameras starting to record. "Let them. Let everyone see. You've watched it enough. Surely you've picked up the basics." Someone laughed, then someone else. Within seconds, the entire hangar was rippling with amusement. The CEO losing her mind, mocking the janitor. It would be all over social media in an hour. Perfect. Grant's face had gone carefully blank. "I wouldn't presume to—" "No, seriously." Veronica stepped closer, playing to the crowd now. "You must have opinions. You see everything, right? You're here when we're not. Maybe you know something we don't." More laughter. Derek Reynolds was watching from across the hangar, his expression horrified. Marcus had appeared at the entrance, phone pressed to his ear, clearly trying to figure out how to stop this. "Tell you what," Veronica said, her voice dripping with false cheer. "Fly the Phoenix for me, successfully, and I'll marry you." The hangar exploded with laughter. People were genuinely howling now. Someone whistled. Someone else shouted, "Better get a prenup, Cal." Veronica smiled, vicious and bright, riding the humiliation she was dealing out. It felt good. Felt powerful. Taking all her fear and frustration and aiming it at someone who couldn't fight back. And then Grant looked directly at her. Really looked. Not deferential anymore. Not invisible. "Is that a real offer?" he asked quietly. The laughter continued around them, but something in his tone made Veronica hesitate. Made her actually see him for the first time. Not as furniture or background, but as a person with thoughts behind those weathered eyes. "Sure," she said, doubling down. "Why not? You crash it, you're fired, and I sue you for damages. You fly it successfully, I'll walk down the aisle. Seems fair." "Put it in writing." The laughter was dying now. People were starting to realize something unexpected was happening. "Excuse me?" Veronica said. "Put it in writing." Grant's voice was steady, calm. "Your offer, the terms, witnessed and signed. If you're serious about the marriage part, you're serious about the flying part. So let's make it official." Someone in the crowd said, "Oh shit." Veronica felt a flicker of unease. This wasn't going the way she'd planned. The janitor was supposed to stammer and back down, giving her a moment of cruel satisfaction. Instead, he was standing there looking at her with perfect composure, as if he was actually considering taking her up on the challenge. "You don't know how to fly a helicopter," she said. "Didn't say I did. I'm asking if your offer is serious." "Of course it's not serious, it's—" She gestured vaguely. "It's a joke." Sounded like a business proposition to me. Grant tilted his head slightly. "You need a pilot. You're desperate enough to mock the janitor in front of 100 witnesses. So either you're having a breakdown, which is unprofessional, or you're actually looking for someone crazy enough to fly an unstable aircraft. Which is it?" The hangar had gone completely silent now. Veronica felt heat rising in her face. He was backing her into a corner with nothing but simple questions, making her look foolish. In front of everyone. "Fine," she snapped. "You want it in writing? Marcus!" Her assistant approached like a man walking to his own execution. Please don't do this. Draw up a contract. Simple terms. Mr. Grant here flies the Phoenix tomorrow morning in front of the board and press. Successfully completes a demonstration flight showing full maneuverability and control. If he succeeds, I marry him. If he crashes or refuses, he's terminated and liable for damages. Witnessed and binding. Veronica. Now, Marcus. Marcus looked at Grant. Sir, you don't have to agree to this. This is clearly... I'll do it, Grant said. Everyone stared at him. You'll do what? Veronica demanded. I'll fly your helicopter, tomorrow morning, in front of whoever you want. He paused. But I have conditions. You have conditions? Yes, ma'am. Grant's voice remained perfectly even. First, I want my terms added to the contract. Second, I want it understood that when I succeed, not if when, you honor your commitments publicly. Third, I want to guarantee that the maintenance staff gets a 10% raise across the board, effective immediately, as part of the deal. Someone gasped. You're out of your mind, Veronica said. Maybe. Or maybe I know exactly what I'm doing. Grant looked around the hangar at all the phones recording, all the faces watching. See, the thing about being invisible is people stop being careful what they say around you. They stop paying attention. You become furniture, and furniture hears everything. He turned back to Veronica. I've listened to your engineers for 8 years, watched every test, seen every failure. I know the Phoenix has a 0.3-second control lag because the fiber optic command system isn't synchronized with the hydraulic response modules. I know the redundant systems are actually causing interference instead of providing backup. And I know exactly how to compensate for it in flight. Derek Reynolds stepped forward. That's impossible. Unless you're an engineer? No, just someone who pays attention. Grant's eyes never left Veronica's. So here's the real question, Ms. Hale. Are you brave enough to let the janitor prove you've been overlooking your best asset? Or are you too proud to admit you might be wrong about who deserves respect in your own company? Veronica felt like the ground had shifted under her feet. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't in the script. The janitor was supposed to be humiliated, not standing there making her look like a fool. But she couldn't back down now. Not with everyone watching, not with phones recording everything. Fine, she said. You want to play hero? Let's see you pull it off. Marcus, drop the contract. Mr. Grant flies tomorrow at 0800 hours. Full demonstration profile. Either he's a genius or he's a corpse. Either way, this gets resolved. Grant nodded. Fair enough. But I want one more thing. Of course you do. After I fly successfully, I want you to apologize, publicly, to me and every other maintenance worker in this facility, for treating us like we're invisible, like we don't matter. The hangar was so quiet, Veronica could hear the ventilation system humming. You're serious, she said. Yes, ma'am. That's the price. You get your demonstration flight and your board votes the way you want. I get recognition that people like me have value beyond pushing mops. And everyone here gets to watch a CEO learn what humility actually looks like. Veronica wanted to scream, wanted to fire him on the spot, wanted to walk away from this entire nightmare scenario. But she couldn't. Because he was right about one thing. She was desperate, and pride didn't matter nearly as much as survival. Done, she said. Fly the Phoenix successfully, and I'll apologize. Crash it, and you lose everything. I won't crash it. Grant said it with such simple certainty that Veronica almost believed him. Almost. We'll see, she said. 0800 hours tomorrow. Don't be late. She turned and walked away, forcing herself not to look back, not to show any weakness. Behind her, the hangar erupted into chaos, people shouting questions, phones dialing, speculation running wild. Marcus caught up with her at the elevator. Do you have any idea what you just did? Solved my pilot problem. You made a legally binding contract with the janitor to marry him if he successfully flies a $28 million prototype that trained pilots won't touch. Then I guess I'd better hope he's as crazy as he sounds. Veronica stepped into the elevator. Draw up the contract. Make it ironclad. And get me everything we have on Cal Grant. Employment records, background, everything. I want to know exactly who I'm dealing with. The elevator doors closed on Marcus's horrified expression. Veronica leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Her heart was racing, her hands were shaking. She'd just staked her entire career on the competence of a man whose full name she'd learned 30 seconds ago. But underneath the terror was something else. Something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Because Cal Grant hadn't looked afraid, hadn't looked uncertain. He'd looked at that helicopter the way she'd seen combat pilots look at aircraft, with recognition, with understanding. And if he was telling the truth about knowing the Phoenix's problems, either I'm a genius or I'm finished, she muttered to the empty elevator. The doors opened on her floor. Veronica stepped out and headed for her office, already planning tomorrow's press release, already calculating the board's reactions, already gambling everything on the idea that sometimes the people you've overlooked are the ones who can save you. Behind her in the hangar, Cal Grant picked up his mop and went back to work. But this time, people were watching him differently. This time, he wasn't invisible, and by morning, the entire world would know his name. By 6 o'clock that evening, Cal Grant's name was trending on 3 different social media platforms. The video had gone viral within hours. CEO makes cruel bet with janitor, janitor accepts, internet loses its collective mind. News outlets picked it up. Aviation forums exploded with speculation. Defense industry analysts were calling it everything from a publicity stunt to a corporate meltdown. And through it all, Cal's phone, an ancient flip model he'd owned for a decade, remained mercifully silent because almost nobody had the number. He sat in his small apartment 15 miles from the facility, eating reheated pasta at a kitchen table scarred by years of use, and tried not to think about what he'd just committed to doing. The apartment was clean but sparse. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a living room with furniture that had been inexpensive 20 years ago and was now just old. The walls were bare except for a single framed photograph on the bookshelf, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, smiling at the camera like she had a secret. Cal looked at it for a long moment, then looked away. "Well, Sarah," he said quietly to the empty room, "I finally did something stupid enough to make the news." His phone rang, the flip kind of ring, tinny and insistent. Cal looked at the caller ID and sighed, then answered, "Hi, Rebecca." "Dad, what the hell?" His daughter's voice was tight with the particular kind of stress that came from having your estranged father become a viral sensation. Cal could picture her in her downtown apartment, probably pacing, probably furious. "I saw the video," he said. "Everyone saw the video. Dad, you're all over the internet. People are calling you the janitor pilot and making memes about—" She stopped, took a breath. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking your old man might still know how to fly a helicopter." "You haven't flown in 15 years. 16, and I didn't forget how." "That's not the point," Rebecca's voice rose. "The point is, you let some corporate shark humiliate you in front of cameras, and instead of walking away with dignity, you agreed to risk your life flying an experimental aircraft that trained pilots won't touch." "She didn't humiliate me, honey. She showed everyone exactly who she is. I just responded honestly. By accepting a marriage proposal from someone who was clearly mocking you," Cal smiled despite himself. "She's going to regret that part." "Dad, Rebecca." He kept his voice gentle. "I know you're worried. I know we haven't talked much since your mom died. I know you think I threw my life away. But tomorrow morning, I'm going to do something I should have done years ago. I'm going to stop being invisible." There was silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "Mom wouldn't want you doing something dangerous just to prove a point. Your mom would want me to stand up when I see people being treated like they don't matter. You know that's true." More silence. Cal could hear traffic in the background of Rebecca's call, could imagine her standing by her window, looking out at the city, struggling with all the complicated feelings that came from loving a parent you didn't quite understand anymore. "If you die tomorrow," she said finally, "I'm going to be so angry at you. If I die tomorrow, I won't be around to notice." "That's not funny." "Little bit funny." "Dad, I love you too, honey." Rebecca made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Call me after, when you don't die." "Deal." She hung up. Cal set the phone down and looked at the photograph again. Sarah Grant had been a pediatric nurse, the kind of person who made scared children feel brave and worried parents feel capable. She'd married Cal when they were both 23 and impossibly optimistic about the future. She'd supported his military career through 3 deployments and a dozen relocations. She'd raised Rebecca mostly on her own, while Cal flew missions he still couldn't talk about. And when the cancer came, brutal and fast, she'd faced it with the same quiet courage she'd brought to everything else. The medical bills had been catastrophic, even with military benefits, even with insurance. The experimental treatments and specialist consultations had buried them in debt so deep Cal could barely see daylight. He'd sold the house, cashed out his retirement, borrowed against everything they owned. It hadn't been enough. Sarah died on a Tuesday morning in April, holding his hand, telling him she was proud of him, telling him to take care of their daughter, telling him it was okay to let go. Cal had been a colonel then, a decorated combat aviation instructor with 30 years of service and a reputation for being the best stick in the business. But standing in that hospital room watching his wife slip away, none of it had mattered. All his skills and training and experience couldn't save the only person who'd ever really mattered. After the funeral, he'd resigned his commission, walked away from the military with nothing but a modest pension and a mountain of medical debt the creditors wanted paid immediately. The offers for civilian contractor work had been lucrative, but they all required deployments, months away from Rebecca, who was struggling with her grief and barely speaking to him. So Cal had taken the first local job he could find, maintenance technician at Hale Aerospace Systems. Minimum wage, night shifts, cleaning floors that people walked across without ever looking down. He'd been invisible ever since. But tomorrow, he thought, standing and carrying his empty plate to the sink, tomorrow everyone would see exactly what he could do. He washed the dish slowly, methodically, the way he did everything now. Then he went to the bedroom and pulled a worn duffel bag from the closet. Inside, wrapped in an old flight suit, was his helmet. Custom fitted, battered from years of use, with his call sign still visible on the side, Prophet. Cal hadn't touched it in 16 years. He ran his fingers over the scratched surface, remembering missions over mountains and deserts, remembering the weight of responsibility and the clarity of purpose, remembering who he used to be before grief and debt had ground him down into someone who cleaned floors and stayed quiet. Tomorrow, he thought, tomorrow we remember. He set the helmet on the nightstand and lay down without bothering to undress. Sleep would come or it wouldn't. Either way, dawn was only hours away. Across the city, in her executive office, Veronica Hale wasn't sleeping either. She sat at her desk, surrounded by documents Marcus had compiled on Cal Grant, and the more she read, the less she understood. "This can't be right," she said. Marcus looked up from his laptop where he was drafting 17 different versions of tomorrow's press release depending on how catastrophically things went. "Which part?" "Any of it. All of it." Veronica gestured at the personnel file. "According to this, Cal Grant has worked here for 8 years as maintenance staff. Clean record, perfect attendance, 0 disciplinary issues. Before that, there's nothing. No employment history, no references, just a social security number and an address. Maybe he worked under the table, construction, day labor, that kind of thing. For decades?" Veronica flipped through the pages. "His emergency contact is listed as Rebecca Grant, daughter, but there's no other family information, no spouse, no education history, nothing. It's like he appeared fully formed 8 years ago and just started mopping floors." "People fall through the cracks," Marcus said. "Maybe he had a hard life. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about it. Or maybe he's hiding something." Veronica picked up her phone. "I'm calling a background check service, the expensive kind. If Mr. Grant has secrets, I want to know them before he touches my helicopter. It's 1 in the morning. Then they'll charge me extra." She started dialing. "I'm not putting a complete unknown in a $28 million aircraft without knowing exactly who he is." 3 hours later, as false dawn began lightening the sky, Veronica had her answer. She stared at the report on her screen, reading it twice to make sure she wasn't hallucinating from exhaustion. "Colonel Calvin James Grant, United States Army, retired, 30 years of service, combat aviation instructor. Multiple decorations including the Distinguished Flying Cross. Thousands of flight hours across 6 different aircraft types. Expert ratings in combat maneuvers, emergency procedures, and advanced aerobatics. Honorable discharge 16 years ago." "Oh no," Veronica whispered. She grabbed her phone and called Marcus. He answered on the first ring, sounding as exhausted as she felt. Please tell me you're calling to cancel. He's a colonel, Marcus. Cal Grant is a retired Army colonel, one of the best combat pilots in his generation. Silence. Then, you're joking. I'm looking at his service record right now. He's not a janitor who happens to know about helicopters. He's a legitimate expert who's been cleaning our floors for 8 years and nobody noticed. Why would someone with that background take a minimum wage maintenance job? I don't know, but I'm about to find out. Veronica stood and grabbed her jacket. Meet me at the facility in 20 minutes. And Marcus, get legal on the phone. I need to know if that contract we drafted is still binding if I was operating under false assumptions about his qualifications. Veronica, if he's actually qualified to fly the Phoenix, doesn't that solve your problem? It solves one problem and creates a dozen others. Move. She hung up and headed for the elevator, her mind racing. All of yesterday's humiliation, the cruel joke, the public mockery, the viral video suddenly looked very different in context. She hadn't been bullying a helpless janitor. She'd been insulting a decorated combat veteran who'd chosen to stay silent and let her make a fool of herself. The question was why. The facility was already crawling with activity when Veronica arrived. The press had been invited for an 0800 demonstration, which meant crews were setting up camera positions and lighting equipment. The board had confirmed they'd be attending in person. And somewhere in the chaos, Cal Grant was probably preparing to make her look like the worst kind of corporate villain. She found Derek Reynolds in the test bay, running final checks on the Phoenix. Tell me the aircraft is ready, she said. Derek looked up, startled. As ready as it's going to be. The control lag is still there, but I've optimized the response curves as much as possible. If your pilot knows what he's doing... He stopped. Wait, you found out, didn't you? Found out what? About Cal. Derek's expression was carefully neutral. About his background. Veronica went very still. You knew? I suspected. Nobody without aviation experience talks about control systems the way he did yesterday. So I asked around, called a friend at Fort Rucker who might have known him back in the day. Derek pulled off his work gloves. Cal Grant was a legend, Veronica, the kind of pilot other pilots tell stories about. If he says he can fly the Phoenix, I believe him. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened, or would you have thought I was making excuses for letting a janitor near the aircraft? Derek met her eyes. You needed to figure this out yourself. Maybe learn something in the process. Learn what exactly? That the people you don't see are still people. That respect isn't about job titles. That sometimes the person with the most valuable perspective is the one you've been ignoring. He paused. Should I keep going, or are you getting the point? Veronica wanted to snap at him, wanted to defend herself, but she couldn't because he was right. She'd spent 8 years walking past Cal Grant without ever really seeing him, without wondering who he was or what he knew or why someone with his bearing and intelligence was pushing a mop instead of flying. Where is he? She asked quietly. Break room. Been here since 0500. Reviewing technical specs and drinking coffee. Veronica found him exactly where Derek said he'd be, sitting at a corner table with a spread of documents and a cup of black coffee, looking like a general planning a campaign. He was wearing the same maintenance uniform, but somehow it looked different now. Or maybe she was just seeing him differently. He glanced up when she entered. Ms. Hale. Colonel Grant. His expression didn't change. So you know. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't ask. He took a sip of coffee. Besides, would it have changed anything? You weren't looking for expertise yesterday. You were looking for a target, someone to humiliate so you could feel powerful for 5 minutes. The words should have made her angry. Instead, they just felt true. Veronica pulled out a chair and sat down. I owe you an apology. Save it for after the flight. That was the deal. The deal was made under false pretenses. You let me think you were just a janitor with a death wish. I am a janitor. Have been for 8 years. The fact that I used to be something else doesn't change what I am now. Cal met her eyes. And you're the one who made assumptions, Ms. Hale. I never lied. I just didn't volunteer information you never bothered to ask for. You could have told me you were qualified to fly. And missed the chance to watch you realize that you've been overlooking competent people because they don't fit your expectations? Cal's smile was slight but sharp. This has been educational for both of us. Veronica felt heat rising in her face. You set me up. No, you set yourself up. I just agreed to the terms you offered. He gestured at the technical documents. Now, are we going to keep arguing about pride, or are we going to talk about how to fly this helicopter without killing me? Despite everything, Veronica almost laughed. You're serious. You're actually going to do it. I gave my word, and unlike some people, I keep my promises. Cal pushed one of the documents toward her. The Phoenix has good bones. The engineering is solid, but your flight control system is trying to be too smart. It's compensating for inputs that don't need compensation and creating lag in the process. In combat, that gets people killed. Can you work around it? I can, but it'll take some aggressive maneuvering to demonstrate capability without triggering the lag issues. Your board is expecting smooth demonstration flying. They're going to get combat-level aerobatics instead. Will that be safe? Cal looked at her steadily. Define safe. Will you survive? Probably, but I can't guarantee I won't scare everyone watching. He leaned back. The question is whether you're willing to let me fly the way the aircraft needs to be flown, or if you want me to baby it and hope the problems don't show. Veronica thought about the board, about James Whitmore, about all the cameras that would be recording every second. Thought about her career and her reputation and everything she stood to lose. Then she thought about the 300 people who worked at this facility, who trusted her to keep them employed, who deserved better than corporate politics and ego. Fly it the way it needs to be flown, she said. Show them what the Phoenix can really do. Cal nodded. Then I need two things from you. First, clear the demonstration area. No observers closer than 200 yards. If something goes wrong, I don't want to take anyone else out with me. Done. What else? After I land, you honor the terms of our contract, all of them, including the apology and the raises for maintenance staff. No hedging, no corporate double talk. You made a promise in front of witnesses, and I expect you to keep it. Even the marriage part? Especially that part. Cal's smile turned genuinely amused. Don't worry, Ms. Hale. I'm not going to hold you to a lifetime commitment based on a moment of desperation, but I am going to make you say yes to something you meant as a joke. Make you feel what it's like to have your words taken seriously when you're used to people dismissing them. Veronica stared at him. This whole thing is a lesson. You're teaching me a lesson. Call it whatever you want, but at EO 800 hours, we're both going to learn something about respect. He stood and gathered his documents. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to do a pre-flight inspection. Unlike some people, I don't believe in taking unnecessary risks. He walked past her toward the hangar. Veronica sat there for a long moment, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Ashamed. Not of her company or her decisions or even her desperation, but of the casual cruelty she'd shown yesterday. The easy dismissal of someone's humanity because he wore a different uniform than she did. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. The contract stands, she said. All terms, no modifications. Veronica, if he's actually qualified, the contract stands. And Marcus, after this is over, I want a full review of our maintenance staff. Pay scales, benefits, working conditions, all of it. If we've been underpaying people, we fix it. If we've been ignoring expertise, we promote it. Clear? Crystal clear. Marcus sounded surprised but pleased. I'll start the paperwork. Veronica hung up and headed toward the hangar. The sky outside was brightening toward full dawn. In 90 minutes, the board would arrive. In 2 hours, cameras would be rolling and her entire future would depend on a man she'd tried to humiliate. The Phoenix sat in the center of the hangar, gleaming under the work lights. Cal was walking around it slowly, running his hands over the composite panels, checking connections, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd done this 10,000 times before. Veronica approached quietly, not wanting to interrupt. She's beautiful, Cal said without looking up. Your engineers did remarkable work. If you'd given them 6 more months, they would have solved the control issues completely. We don't have 6 months. I know. That's why I'm here. He finished his inspection and straightened. I meant what I said about the marriage proposal, you know. I'm not going to hold you to it, but I'm going to make you say the words. Make you stand in front of everyone and admit you were wrong about me. About all of us. I understand. Do you? Cal turned to face her fully. Because I've spent 8 years watching you walk past people like we're furniture, watching you treat skilled workers like they're disposable. And yesterday, when you needed help, your first instinct was to mock someone instead of asking respectfully. That's not leadership, Ms. Hale. That's fear dressed up as power. The words hit harder than any insult could have. You're right, Veronica said quietly. Cal blinked. What? You're right. About all of it. I've been so focused on fighting for respect from the board that I forgot to show respect to the people working for me. I treated you terribly yesterday. I treated everyone terribly. And I'm sorry. It was possibly the first truly sincere apology she'd given in years. Cal studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Apology noted, but you still have to say it publicly. That was the deal. I will, after you fly. Oh, I'll fly. Cal's expression shifted into something Veronica recognized, the look of a professional about to do what they were born to do. And when I do, your board is going to remember why the Phoenix program is worth saving, because I'm not flying to prove I can. I'm flying to prove she can. He walked toward the ready room to change into flight gear, leaving Veronica standing alone beside the helicopter. Around her, the facility continued its frantic preparations. But for just a moment, Veronica let herself imagine what Cal must have felt yesterday, standing in this same space, invisible and dismissed, watching people like her make decisions without ever considering that he might have something valuable to contribute. It must have been maddening and lonely and completely, devastatingly unfair. She reached out and touched the Phoenix's landing gear, feeling the cool metal under her palm. Don't let him down, she whispered to the machine. Please don't let him down. Because if Cal crashed, if something went wrong, she wouldn't just lose her company. She'd lose the chance to prove she could be better than the person she'd been yesterday. And that, Veronica realized, mattered more than she'd expected. The board arrived at 0745, exactly on schedule. James Whitmore led them through the facility like he owned it, which he was clearly hoping to do after today. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Ms. Hale, he said, his tone dripping with false courtesy. I understand we're in for quite a show this morning. The Phoenix will speak for itself, Veronica replied evenly. And your pilot? Whitmore's smile was cruel. I understand he's somewhat unconventional. Colonel Cal Grant is eminently qualified. Colonel? Whitmore's eyebrows rose. The video showed a janitor. The video showed a man doing honest work. His previous career doesn't diminish his current one. Or are you suggesting that military service is somehow less valuable than corporate position? Whitmore's expression hardened. I'm suggesting that desperation makes people do foolish things, and flying an experimental aircraft to save your job seems particularly foolish. Then you should enjoy the demonstration, Veronica said. One way or another, this gets resolved today. She walked away before he could respond, heading toward the observation area where press and staff were being assembled. The crowd was larger than she'd expected, word had spread, and everyone wanted to see what happened next in the viral sensation of the janitor who'd challenged the CEO. At exactly 0800 hours, Cal emerged from the ready room in full flight gear. The crowd went silent. He looked different now. Not because the equipment changed him, but because he moved differently. The careful invisibility was gone, replaced by the bearing of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of. He walked across the hangar floor like he owned it, and people instinctively moved out of his way. Veronica met him at the Phoenix. Last chance to back out, she said quietly. Cal smiled. Not a chance in hell. He climbed into the cockpit with practiced ease, running through pre-flight checks while Veronica watched from the ground. His hands moved over the controls with absolute certainty. Someone who'd done this so many times it was muscle memory. Derek Reynolds appeared at her elbow. He knows what he's doing. I hope so, Veronica said, because if this goes wrong, it won't. The Phoenix's engine spooled up with a high whine that made everyone take an instinctive step back. The rotors began to turn, slowly at first, then faster, creating a downdraft that scattered loose papers and made people shield their eyes. Cal's voice came over the radio, calm and professional. Tower, This is Phoenix 1 requesting clearance for demonstration flight. Local area, duration approximately 15 minutes. Phoenix 1, you are cleared for takeoff, the tower controller responded. Good luck, sir. Won't need it, Cal said. But I appreciate the sentiment. The helicopter lifted. The Phoenix rose smoothly, almost delicately, like a predator stretching after a long sleep. Cal brought it to a hover at 50 feet, holding position with the kind of precision that made it look effortless. The helicopter hung in the air as steady as if it were bolted to the sky, and Veronica found herself holding her breath without realizing it. Around her, the crowd had gone absolutely silent. Even the reporters had stopped narrating for their cameras, too transfixed by what they were watching to remember they were supposed to be documenting it. Cal's voice came over the external speakers, projected so everyone could hear. Phoenix demonstrating basic hover control, aircraft responding well to inputs, no unusual vibration or drift. He sounded like he was commenting on the weather, casual, unremarkable, as if he hadn't just taken a prototype aircraft that had terrified trained pilots and made it dance. Then he moved. The Phoenix pivoted on its axis, rotating a complete 360 in what couldn't have been more than 4 seconds. The movement was so smooth, so controlled, that it took Veronica's brain a moment to process that it had happened at all. Then Cal brought the nose down and accelerated forward, building speed so quickly that the helicopter blurred. Derek grabbed Veronica's arm. He's going too fast. He knows what he's doing, Veronica said, but her heart was hammering. Cal took the Phoenix up at a steep angle, climbing hard, the engine screaming with effort. At 200 feet, he rolled the aircraft 90 degrees and held it there, flying sideways across the facility, the rotors parallel to the ground in a maneuver that should have been impossible. Someone in the crowd gasped. Someone else swore. James Whitmore stepped forward, his face pale. That's not a standard demonstration profile. What the hell is he doing? He's showing you what the Phoenix can do, Derek said quietly. Really do. Cal leveled out and came back toward the observation area. But instead of slowing down, he accelerated again, dropping altitude until he was barely 30 feet off the ground and moving fast enough that the rotor wash was bending trees. Then, impossibly, he brought the helicopter to a complete stop in midair. Full speed to 0 in less than 2 seconds, with no drift, no wobble, nothing but perfect control. The physics of it shouldn't have worked. The Phoenix should have pitched forward for momentum, should have struggled with the sudden change. Instead, it hung there like Cal had simply reached out and grabbed it. Veronica realized her mouth was open. She closed it. Demonstrating rapid deceleration and emergency stop capabilities, Cal's voice said calmly. Control response is excellent, minimal lag noted, and easily compensated. Minimal lag, Derek repeated, stunned. He's making it sound like a minor inconvenience. Because for him, it is, Veronica said. She was beginning to understand something that should have been obvious from the start. Cal wasn't just qualified to fly the Phoenix. He was overqualified in ways she hadn't imagined possible. This wasn't a test for him. It was a demonstration of the gap between good pilots and legendary ones. Cal took the aircraft back up, climbing in a tight spiral that showed off the Phoenix's power-to-weight ratio. At 500 feet, he leveled out and began a series of maneuvers that made Veronica's stomach drop just watching from the ground. Sharp banks that looked like the helicopter was going to flip over. Sudden drops followed by pulls that must have been generating massive G-forces. Combinations of movements that were clearly designed to stress every system on the aircraft simultaneously. And through it all, the Phoenix responded like an extension of Cal's body. Precise. Immediate. Perfect. He's not compensating for the lag, Derek said suddenly. He's anticipating it. Every input he makes accounts for the delay before it happens. He's flying 0.3 seconds into the future. Is that possible? Only if you have thousands of hours of experience and reflexes like... Derek stopped. He's doing combat maneuvers. Those aren't demonstration patterns. He's flying this like he's in a firefight. Veronica watched as Cal brought the Phoenix into a tight spiral descent, the kind of maneuver designed to avoid ground fire while maintaining situational awareness. He was showing the board more than just that the aircraft worked. He was showing them exactly what it was capable of in the hands of someone who knew how to use it as a weapon. It was terrifying and beautiful and absolutely devastating to watch. James Whitmore had gone very quiet beside her, His earlier smug confidence had evaporated, replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like fear, not of the aircraft, of what it meant that they'd been wrong. "How long has that man been working here?" Whitmore asked quietly. 8 years, Veronica said, as maintenance staff. "And nobody knew? Nobody asked." The words hung in the air between them like an accusation. Cal brought the Phoenix down from altitude in a controlled dive that ended in another perfect hover, this time at eye level with the observation area. The helicopter hung there, close enough that Veronica could see Cal's face through the canopy. He looked completely calm, almost relaxed, like this was the most natural thing in the world. Then he did something that made every engineer present gasp in synchronized horror. He cut the engines. The Phoenix dropped like a stone, falling 30 feet in complete silence except for the whistle of air through the rotors. It should have crashed, should have hit the ground hard enough to shatter the landing gear and probably explode. Instead, at the last possible second, Cal reignited the engines and used the rotor's momentum to cushion the landing. The helicopter touched down so gently that Veronica barely heard it make contact with the tarmac. Total silence followed. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Derek started clapping. It broke the spell. Suddenly everyone was applauding, the sound building like a wave until it was nearly deafening. Reporters were shouting questions, cameras were flashing, and engineers were staring at the Phoenix like it had just performed a miracle. The canopy opened. Cal climbed out, pulling off his helmet, and for the first time since this whole mess had started, he smiled. Not the careful, invisible smile of someone trying not to be noticed. The genuine smile of someone who just remembered who they used to be. Veronica walked across the tarmac to meet him, very aware of every camera pointed in their direction. The contract terms were clear, specific, and utterly binding. She stopped in front of Cal and the crowd quieted again, everyone wanting to hear what happened next. "Colonel Grant," she said, her voice carrying across the sudden silence, "you've successfully completed the demonstration flight." "Yes, ma'am," Cal said. "The Phoenix performed admirably. You have an exceptional aircraft. The control lag is manageable with proper piloting technique, but I'd still recommend your engineers address the synchronization issues before production." "Noted." Veronica took a breath. This was it. The moment that would define whether she was capable of growth or just another executive too proud to admit mistakes. "According to our contract, I now owe you 3 things. A public apology, a commitment to raise maintenance staff salaries by 10%, and," she paused, "a marriage proposal." The crowd erupted in nervous laughter. Someone whistled, but Cal just stood there waiting, his expression neutral. Veronica got down on one knee. The laughter stopped immediately. "I apologize," she said clearly, "to you and to every member of our maintenance staff. I've treated you as invisible. I've dismissed your value and ignored your expertise. I've let titles and positions blind me to the humanity and competence of the people who keep this company running. That was wrong. It was cruel. And it stops today." Cal nodded slowly. "Apology accepted." "And the proposal?" Someone from the crowd called out. Veronica looked up at Cal, saw the quiet challenge in his eyes, and understood what he was really asking for. Not marriage, not a relationship, just public acknowledgement that words had consequences, that promises made mockingly still counted, that power came with responsibility. "Cal Grant," she said, "will you marry me?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Cal let it sit there for a long moment. Let everyone feel the weight of it. Let Veronica understand fully what she'd done yesterday when she'd thrown that offer out as a joke. Then he smiled slightly. "No, ma'am, I won't." Veronica blinked. "You won't?" "I won't, because I don't want a marriage based on a dare or a contract or corporate humiliation." Cal extended his hand to help her up. "But I will accept your apology, and I will hold you to the other terms. The raises, the respect, the changes you promised." Veronica took his hand and stood, relief and embarrassment warring on her face. "Then we have a deal." "We do." Cal turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying with the authority of someone used to commanding attention. "I want everyone here to understand something. I don't need Ms. Hale's money or position or status. I don't need recognition or fame or viral videos. What I need, what we all need, is for the people in power to remember that everyone in this facility matters. Not because of what we can do for them, but because we're human beings deserving of basic respect. He looked back at Veronica. That's the lesson. That's what all of this was about. Not proving I could fly, proving that you could learn. James Whitmore pushed through the crowd, his face red with poorly suppressed anger. This is all very touching, but we still have business to discuss. The Phoenix may have flown today, but that doesn't change the fundamental questions about production viability, cost overruns, and— Mr. Whitmore, Cal interrupted calmly. May I ask what you saw during that demonstration? I saw a skilled pilot performing admirably with a flawed aircraft. You saw a prototype exceeding military specifications for maneuverability, power delivery, and control response. You saw an aircraft that could be deployed tomorrow and outperform everything currently in service. Cal's voice hardened slightly. And you saw a company that almost threw all of that away because the CEO was too proud to listen to the people who actually understood what they'd built. I'm sorry, who are you to lecture this board about? Colonel Calvin Grant, retired, 30 years of service, chief aviation instructor at Fort Rucker for 7 years. I've evaluated more helicopter designs than you've seen board meetings, Mr. Whitmore. And I'm telling you that the Phoenix is viable, marketable, and exactly what this company needs to secure its future. He paused. The question is whether you're smart enough to recognize that or too committed to your grudges to see opportunity. Whitmore's face went from red to purple. You can't speak to me like that. I just did. Because unlike Ms. Hale here, I don't need your approval or your position. I can walk away from this facility and never think about it again. Cal's expression didn't change. But she can't. And 300 workers can't. So maybe instead of playing politics, you should focus on doing what's actually best for the company. The board members were watching this exchange with expressions ranging from shock to fascination. Nobody talked to James Whitmore like this. Nobody dared. Except Cal clearly didn't care about dares or consequences or any of the social rules that governed corporate behavior. He just cared about truth. Whitmore seemed to realize he was losing the room. He straightened his tie and forced his expression into something more controlled. I'll want a full technical report, independent evaluation, safety analysis. Of course, Veronica said quickly. We can provide all of that. And I'll want to know why we've had a qualified test pilot working as a janitor for 8 years without anyone noticing. That, Veronica said quietly, is an excellent question, and one I intend to answer by reviewing our entire hiring and advancement process. She looked at Cal. Would you be willing to help with that, officially? Cal tilted his head. In what capacity? Chief Test Pilot, Director of Flight Operations. Whatever title makes sense. Full benefits, competitive salary, and actual respect for your expertise. She paused. I know I don't deserve your help after yesterday, but I'm asking anyway. Because you're right about the Phoenix, and you're right about how we've been treating people, and I want to fix both. I have conditions, Cal said. Of course you do. The maintenance raise is non-negotiable. Full 10%, implemented within 30 days. Second, I want quarterly reviews of working conditions across all departments, not just maintenance. If people are being overlooked or underpaid, we fix it. Third, he glanced at Whitmore. I want a seat at the table when production decisions are made. Not to play politics, but to make sure we're actually listening to the people who build and maintain these aircraft. Whitmore looked like he'd swallowed something sour. That's highly irregular. So was putting a janitor in a prototype to save the CEO's job, Cal said mildly. Let's embrace irregular. Despite herself, Veronica almost laughed. I accept your conditions, all of them. Then I accept your offer. Cal extended his hand. But I want it clear that I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for everyone else here who deserves better than they've been getting. Veronica shook his hand, feeling the calloused strength in his grip. Understood. The crowd erupted in applause again, but this time it felt different. Less like entertainment and more like genuine relief that something important had just shifted. Derek Reynolds pushed through to clap Cal on the shoulder. That was the best flying I've seen in 20 years. Where the hell did you learn to do that engine cut maneuver? Afghanistan, 2004. Had to put down a Black Hawk with one engine out and the other on fire. Figured if I survived that, I could handle a controlled demonstration. Cal grinned. Though I'll admit the Phoenix made it easier. Your engineering is solid, Derek. You just needed someone willing to push the aircraft hard enough to prove it. I knew you were good when you described the control systems yesterday, Derek said. But that, he gestured at the helicopter. That was art. That was necessity. The board needed to see capability, not caution. Cal looked at Veronica. Your company builds excellent machines, Ms. Hale. You just need to trust them enough to let them prove themselves. And trust the people who understand them, Veronica added quietly. I'm learning. Marcus appeared with a tablet and an expression of controlled panic. The video is everywhere. National news, defense contractors calling. 3 different military procurement offices want information about the Phoenix, and he paused. Someone started a GoFundMe to pay for your wedding. Cancel that immediately, Cal said. I'm not marrying anyone for viral entertainment. Already did, Marcus confirmed. But the publicity is actually good for once. The narrative shifted from CEO humiliates janitor to hidden hero saves company. It's the kind of story people want to believe in. Because it's true, Cal said. People want to believe that competence matters more than credentials, that doing good work has value even when nobody's watching, that you can be invisible for years and still matter when it counts. He looked around at the maintenance crew that had gathered at the edge of the observation area, watching everything with careful attention. Cal raised his voice slightly to address them directly. I spent 8 years with you, working third shift, cleaning floors, being invisible. And I want you to know that the raise isn't charity. It's not Ms. Hale being generous. It's recognition of value that was always there. You keep this place running. You notice things that engineers miss. You matter. One of the maintenance workers, an older woman named Maria who'd worked there longer than Cal, stepped forward. You really a colonel? Was. Long time ago. Why didn't you say something? Why let people treat you like... She stopped, searching for words. Like I didn't matter? Cal finished gently. Because I needed to understand what that felt like. Needed to remember that the uniform doesn't make the person. And honestly, I needed a job that let me be close to home when my wife was dying. Pride doesn't pay medical bills, Maria. Sometimes you do what you have to do. Maria's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. About your wife. Me too. Cal's voice softened. But she'd be glad about today. About all of this. She always believed that people were better than they thought they were. That they just needed the right push to remember. Is that what yesterday was? Veronica asked quietly. A push? More like a shove, Cal admitted. But you needed it. This whole company needed it. Sometimes you have to break something before you can fix it properly. James Whitmore had been conferring with other board members in low tones. Now he stepped forward again, his expression carefully neutral. Colonel Grant, I'd like to apologize for my earlier skepticism. Your demonstration was impressive, and your points about the Phoenix's capabilities are well taken. Apology accepted, Cal said. But if you're going to listen to me about the aircraft, you need to listen to Ms. Hale about the company. She's fighting to keep people employed, Mr. Whitmore. That's worth more than whatever grudge you're nursing. Whitmore stiffened. I don't hold grudges. Then prove it. Vote to continue the Phoenix program. Give the team the resources they need to refine the control systems. And stop treating this company like a battlefield where your goal is to win instead of to build something worthwhile. You're very free with your opinions. That's what happens when you don't need the job. I can be honest because I have nothing to lose. Cal smiled slightly. Consider it a benefit of hiring people who aren't desperate for your approval. This time, several board members actually laughed. Even Whitmore's mouth twitched toward something that might have been a smile. Fine, Whitmore said. We'll table the termination vote, but I want monthly reports on progress. Real progress, not corporate spin. You'll get them, Veronica promised, and Colonel Grant will be providing technical oversight to ensure accuracy. I look forward to it, Cal said dryly. The board began to disperse, and reporters started shouting questions. Veronica let Marcus handle the press while she walked with Cal back toward the hangar where the Phoenix sat, cooling down from its flight. You didn't have to defend me, she said quietly, to Whitmore, after everything. I wasn't defending you. I was defending the workers who need this company to succeed. You just happen to be the CEO. Cal ran his hand along the Phoenix's fuselage. But I meant what I said earlier. You can learn. That's more than a lot of people in your position would be willing to do. I have a lot to learn, Veronica admitted. I don't even know most of the maintenance staff's names. Start there. Learn names. Ask questions. Show up when things are broken instead of just when they're successful. Cal looked at her directly. People don't need grand gestures, Ms. Hale. They need consistency. They need to know you'll remember they exist next week and next month, not just when there's a crisis. I can do that. Can you? Cal's tone wasn't unkind, just honest. Because the hard part isn't changing for a day or a week. It's changing permanently. It's remembering that respect is a practice, not a policy. And it's staying humble, even when things are going well. Veronica thought about her corner office and her executive schedule and all the ways she'd insulated herself from the actual work of the company. Thought about how easy it had been to become disconnected. How natural it had felt to start seeing people as functions instead of humans. I'll need help, she said. Accountability. Someone willing to call me out when I backslide. That, Cal said, is what Derek is for. And Marcus. And now me, apparently. He smiled. Welcome to having actual colleagues instead of subordinates. It's uncomfortable but useful. Colonel Grant, Cal, we're colleagues now. Use my name. Cal. Veronica tried it out. Thank you for the flight, for the lesson, for not letting me stay the person I was yesterday. You're welcome, but thank me by actually changing, by making this company somewhere people want to work instead of somewhere they have to work. That's the real demonstration, not the helicopter, the culture. A car pulled up to the edge of the observation area, and a young woman got out, moving quickly toward them. She was in her early 30s, well-dressed, with Cal's eyes and his way of holding herself. Rebecca, Cal said, surprised. What are you doing here? What do you think? She reached them and immediately hugged him, hard. You went viral, Dad. Everyone I know sent me the video. I had to see for myself that you were okay. I'm fine. Better than fine. Rebecca pulled back and looked at him carefully. You look different. You look like I used to? Yeah. She smiled, tears threatening. Mom would have been proud. Your mom would have thought I was showing off, Cal said gently, but she would have approved of the message. Rebecca turned to Veronica. You're the CEO. I am, Veronica Hale. She extended her hand. Your father is remarkable. I know. Rebecca shook her hand firmly. I'm sorry you had to humiliate him to figure it out. The words stung, but Veronica didn't flinch from them. So am I. He's too nice to say this, but I will. He spent 16 years being invisible because of medical debt, because insurance didn't cover everything and specialists cost money and dying with dignity is expensive. Rebecca's voice was tight but controlled. He went from being a colonel to pushing a mop because life broke him, and you walked past him every day without noticing. Rebecca, Cal started. No, Dad. She needs to hear this. Rebecca looked at Veronica directly. People don't become janitors because they lack ambition. They become janitors because life happens, because circumstances change, because sometimes survival means taking whatever work you can get. And they deserve respect regardless. They deserve to be seen. You're absolutely right, Veronica said quietly. And I'm sorry, to both of you. Rebecca studied her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Okay, then prove it. Make this place better. Actually better, not just PR better. I will. Good. Rebecca turned back to her father. Now, can we talk about you flying an experimental helicopter without telling me first? I texted you before takeoff. A text that said, flying today, love you, is not adequate warning. What would have been adequate? Literally anything with more detail. But Rebecca was smiling now, the fear and anger draining into relief. You scared me. I know. I'm sorry. Cal put his arm around her shoulders. Come on, let me buy you coffee and tell you about the Phoenix's control systems. Dad, I don't understand helicopter engineering. Then I'll explain it simply. I'm a teacher, remember? Or I was. You still are, Veronica said. You taught me more in 2 days than I've learned in 2 years. Cal looked back at her, his expression thoughtful. Then make sure the lesson sticks. That's all I ask." He walked away with his daughter, leaving Veronica standing beside the Phoenix in the morning sun. Around her, the facility was returning to normal operations, but something fundamental had shifted. She could feel it in the way maintenance workers were walking with their heads higher, in the way engineers were talking to each other with new energy, in the way even Marcus looked less exhausted and more hopeful. One flight hadn't fixed everything, but it had cracked something open, had shown everyone what was possible when people were seen and valued and trusted to do what they did best. Veronica pulled out her phone and made a note to herself. Learn everyone's names. Start with maintenance. Ask about their lives, not just their work. It was a small thing, a tiny step, but it was a beginning. The first thing Veronica did after Cal left with his daughter was walk into the maintenance break room and ask for their shift schedule. The supervisor, a man named Tom Chen, who'd worked there for 12 years, stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "Ma'am?" "Your shift schedule," Veronica repeated. "When does your team work? What hours? Who's on what rotation?" Tom pulled a wrinkled paper from his clipboard, handling it like it might explode. "We run 3 shifts. Day crew is 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., swing is 2 to 10, and night is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most of the floor cleaning happens on night shift when engineering isn't active." "And Cal worked nights?" "Almost always. Said he liked the quiet." Tom hesitated. "Ms. Hale, is there a problem?" "No problem. I'm just realizing I've never asked about your operations before." Veronica looked around the break room, really seeing it for the first time. The fluorescent lights were flickering. The microwave looked like it predated the company. The chairs were mismatched and worn. "When was this room last updated?" "Updated?" Tom looked confused. "Never, as far as I know." "Never." "Well, we got a new coffee maker about 5 years ago when the old one caught fire." Veronica felt something twist in her chest. She'd just approved a $50,000 espresso system for the executive floor last month. "That changes this week. New furniture, new appliances, better lighting. You eat your meals here. It should be comfortable." Tom's expression shifted from confused to cautious. "Is this because of what happened yesterday?" "Because we don't need charity, ma'am." "It's not charity. It's being a decent employer." Veronica met his eyes. "Tom, I've walked past you for years. I've never asked about your work, your life, whether you had what you needed to do your job well. That was wrong, and I'm going to fix it, but I need your help." "My help with what?" "Understanding what actually needs fixing. Not what I think needs fixing, what you and your team actually need." She pulled out her phone. "Can I get your number and the numbers for your shift leads? I want to set up meetings, real ones, where I listen instead of talk." Tom stared at her for a long moment, clearly trying to determine if this was genuine or some kind of corporate trap. "You're serious?" "Completely. Cal was right yesterday. I've been treating people like furniture. That stops now. But I can't fix what I don't understand, so I need you to teach me." Slowly, Tom rattled off his number. Veronica added it to her contacts, typing his full name carefully. Tom Chen, maintenance supervisor, 12 years of service. Had a son in college, studying engineering. She made a mental note to ask about him next time. "Thank you," she said. "I'll call you next week to set something up. And Tom, if anyone on your team needs anything before then, anything urgent, you call me directly. That's not a policy. That's a promise." She left Tom standing there looking stunned and headed back to her office. Marcus was waiting outside, predictably, with 3 different tablets and an expression that suggested the world had continued spinning while she was having revelations in the break room. "The board wants a formal meeting tomorrow," he said, falling into step beside her. "Whitmore is demanding detailed technical reports, cost projections, and a revised production timeline. Also, the Wall Street Journal wants a comment on today's demonstration. So does Reuters, Defense News, and approximately 15 other outlets. And," he paused, "Cal's daughter called my office. She wants to know about his employment contract." "Of course she does. She's protecting him." Veronica entered her office and gestured for Marcus to close the door. What exactly did Rebecca ask? Whether we're paying him fairly, whether his benefits are comprehensive, and whether we're going to try to control his media appearances. Marcus set down his tablets. "She's a lawyer, by the way. Corporate litigation, very sharp. Good. Cal deserves someone looking out for him. Veronica sat behind her desk and immediately felt wrong about it. The distance, the power dynamic, the physical reminder that she was above and Marcus was below. She stood again. Let's sit at the conference table. This feels too formal. Marcus raised his eyebrows but complied. They settled into chairs that were actually on the same level, and Veronica realized how rarely she did this. How much of her authority came from physical positioning rather than actual competence. I want Cal's contract to be exemplary, she said. Top-tier salary, full executive benefits, stock options, everything. And I want a clause that explicitly states we have no control over his personal statements or media interactions. He's not a spokesperson. He's a technical expert with the freedom to speak honestly. That's going to make PR nervous. PR can adapt. I'm not muzzling someone for telling the truth just because it might be inconvenient. Veronica pulled out her phone and started making notes. I also want a full audit of our compensation structure. Every department, every level. If we're underpaying people relative to market rates, we fix it. If we're underpaying people relative to their actual contributions, we fix that too. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, Veronica, that's going to be expensive. Less expensive than losing good people because we're too cheap to value them properly. Less expensive than another viral disaster because we treated someone badly and they decided to go public. She looked up. And honestly, Marcus, it's the right thing to do. That should be reason enough. It should, Marcus agreed quietly. I'm glad you're realizing that. You could have said something before all this. You could have told me I was becoming someone I shouldn't be. I tried, several times. You told me that sentiment doesn't run companies, results do. Veronica winced. I said that? Multiple times. Usually right after someone complained about working conditions or asked about raises. Marcus leaned back. You weren't always like this, you know. When you started the company, you knew everyone's names. You remembered birthdays. You cared about people as people, not just as labor resources. What changed? Success, and the board, and the constant pressure to grow faster, earn more, beat competitors. Marcus shrugged. You started measuring everything by metrics and forgot that some things can't be quantified, like respect, like basic human decency. The words hurt precisely because they were true. Veronica had let the fight for success turn her into someone focused solely on winning, regardless of the cost to others. She'd become the kind of leader she would have despised when she was younger. Help me remember, she said quietly. When I start slipping back into old patterns, when I start treating people like numbers instead of humans, call me out. Please. That's a dangerous offer, Marcus said. You might not like what I have to say. I definitely won't like it, but I need to hear it anyway. She met his eyes. I'm serious, Marcus. I don't want to be that person anymore, but I need accountability to make sure I actually change. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but fair warning, I'm keeping a list. A list? Of all the things you've done over the past 2 years that I've wanted to address but didn't, because you weren't ready to hear it. Now that you're asking, you're going to get the full download. Veronica felt a flutter of anxiety. How long is this list? Long enough that we should probably schedule a separate meeting just to go through it. That bad? Let's just say yesterday's performance wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a pattern. Marcus's tone was gentle but firm. You ready for that conversation? Veronica thought about saying no, thought about making excuses or deflecting, but Cal's voice echoed in her head. Respect is a practice, not a policy. And practices required consistency, even when it was uncomfortable. Yes, she said. Schedule it. Tomorrow afternoon. Block out 2 hours. And Marcus? Thank you. For staying. For caring enough to keep that list. A lot of people would have just left. I thought about it, Marcus admitted, but I kept hoping you'd remember who you used to be. Looks like Cal just accelerated the timeline. They spent the next hour working through the immediate crisis management, press statements, board preparations, technical documentation. But underneath the logistics, Veronica felt something shifting in their dynamic. Less hierarchy, more partnership. Marcus started offering opinions instead of just options, and Veronica found herself actually listening instead of just waiting for her turn to decide. It was strange, uncomfortable, and significantly better than the way they'd been working before. By early evening, Veronica had done something she hadn't done in 3 years. She left the office before dark. She drove to the address Rebecca had reluctantly provided after Veronica had called and asked, not demanded, asked, if she could speak with Cal about his employment contract in person. Rebecca had been skeptical, but agreed, warning that if Veronica was planning any corporate manipulation, she'd regret it. Cal's apartment was in an older complex 15 miles from the facility. The buildings were dated but well-maintained, with small balconies and a courtyard that had seen better days. Veronica parked her Tesla next to a row of much older vehicles and felt acutely aware of the wealth gap she was carrying into this space. She found Cal's unit on the second floor and knocked. He answered quickly, still in jeans and a worn t-shirt, looking relaxed in a way he never had at work. Ms. Hale, I wasn't expecting you. Veronica, please. And I should have called first. I'm sorry for dropping by unannounced. Cal stepped back. Come in. Fair warning, it's not much. The apartment was exactly what he'd said. Small, spare, meticulously clean. But it was also clearly a home, not just a place to sleep. There were books on the shelves, actual paper books worn from reading. A photograph of a woman Veronica assumed was Sarah. Plants on the windowsill that were thriving under Cal's care. And on the kitchen table, spread out like a war plan, were technical documents about the Phoenix. You're still working, Veronica said. I like to be thorough. Your engineers did good work, but there are refinements that could make the Phoenix exceptional instead of just excellent. Cal gestured to the couch. Sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Fair warning, my hospitality options are limited. I'm fine, thank you. Veronica sat, feeling oddly nervous. This was different from the office, from the public confrontation, from any professional interaction she'd had in years. This was personal. Real. I wanted to talk about your contract and other things, but mostly I wanted to apologize properly. You already apologized. Publicly. That was for show, for the contract terms. This is for me. Veronica looked at him directly. I was cruel yesterday, Cal, not just thoughtless or dismissive, actually cruel. I took my fear and frustration and aimed it at someone I thought couldn't fight back. That's not leadership, that's bullying. Cal sat in the chair across from her, his expression neutral but attentive. Go on. I've spent 2 years becoming someone I don't recognize. Someone who measures people by their utility instead of their humanity. Someone who forgets that everyone has a story, a history, reasons for being where they are. She swallowed. Marcus told me I used to be better, used to know people's names and care about their lives, and I realized today that I can't even remember when I stopped. Success is expensive, Cal said quietly. It costs different people different things. For you, it cost empathy. Is that fixable? Depends. Do you want to fix it because you feel guilty or because you genuinely want to be different? Veronica thought about that, really thought about it. Both, honestly. I feel terrible about what I did, but I also don't want to be the kind of person who does things like that. I want to build a company people are proud to work for, not one they endure because they need the paycheck. Cal nodded slowly. That's a good answer, honest. Rebecca thinks I'm going to manipulate you somehow. She's probably right to be suspicious. Rebecca doesn't trust easily. Her mother died watching me work myself to exhaustion trying to pay medical bills. Then she watched me take a job I was overqualified for because I didn't have any other options. It made her cynical about people in power. Cal's voice was matter of fact, but Veronica heard the pain underneath. She's protecting me. It's what she does. She's good at it. She called Marcus's office asking very pointed questions about your contract. That sounds like her. Cal smiled slightly. What are you offering? Veronica pulled out a folder she'd brought. Full executive compensation package. Salary of $250,000 annually, full benefits, stock options, performance bonuses, title of Chief Test Pilot and Director of Flight Operations, which comes with a seat at production planning meetings. An explicit contractual protection for your right to speak publicly about technical matters without company approval. Cal took the folder and read through it carefully. This is generous. It's appropriate for someone of your qualifications and experience. Frankly, you could probably get more at a competitor. I'm not interested in competitors. I'm interested in whether you're serious about change or just managing a PR crisis. How do I prove I'm serious? Cal set down the folder. Do the work, not the flashy public work, the boring, consistent daily work of treating people well. Learn names, ask questions, show up when things are hard, not just when they're successful. And most importantly, create systems that outlast your good intentions. What do you mean? Right now, you're motivated because you got caught being terrible and it went viral. That's shame-based change. It's powerful, but it doesn't last. Cal leaned forward. Real change happens when you build structures that make good behavior inevitable, pay scales that are fair by default, promotion systems that reward competence over politics, communication channels where people can raise concerns without fear. That's how you make sure the company stays decent, even when you're having a bad day. Veronica pulled out her phone and started taking notes. Tell me more. They talked for 2 hours. Cal outlined problems he'd observed during his 8 years of watching the company from the bottom. Arbitrary favoritism in promotions, inadequate safety equipment, informal hierarchies that punished people for asking questions, dozens of small cruelties that added up to a toxic culture for anyone not in the executive tier. The engineers are great, Cal said. Smart, dedicated, genuinely trying to build something worthwhile. But they're working in a system that doesn't value collaboration across departments. Maintenance knows things engineering should hear, but there's no mechanism for that communication to happen. So problems get missed until they become crises. How do we fix that? Regular cross-department meetings, not formal presentations, actual conversations where people can share observations without it becoming political. And you need to show up. Not a CEO making judgments, but as a participant who's willing to learn. You're describing a complete culture overhaul. I'm describing what functional organizations do naturally. You've just forgotten because you got too big too fast and didn't build the right foundations. Cal shrugged. It's fixable, but it requires you to be consistently present and consistently humble. Can you do that? I don't know, Veronica admitted, but I want to try. That's good enough for now. Cal picked up the contract folder again. I'll accept this offer on one condition. Name it. You work 1 day a week doing maintenance, not as a publicity stunt, actually doing the work, cleaning floors, emptying trash, maintaining equipment, for a full year. Veronica stared at him. You're serious? Completely. You need to understand what that work feels like, what it's like to be invisible, to have people walk past you like furniture, to do necessary work that nobody acknowledges. Cal's expression was implacable. You put that in the contract as a requirement of my employment, and I'll sign. Otherwise, I'll take a different offer. You have other offers? 3, as of this afternoon. Defense contractors who saw the video. Cal smiled slightly. Turns out viral fame has benefits, but I'd rather stay here if you're actually committed to change. So prove it. Do the work nobody else wants to do, and learn what your employees already know. Veronica's first instinct was to argue, to explain why that was impractical, undignified, a waste of her time. Then she remembered standing in front of Cal yesterday, offering marriage as a joke, and feeling the weight of consequence when he accepted. This was the same thing. He was offering her a chance to understand her own cruelty by experiencing what she'd dismissed as beneath her notice. Okay, she said. 1 day a week for a year. I'll have Marcus add it to the contract addendum. Night shift, Cal specified. Tuesdays, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's when you'll see what the company really looks like without the performance of professionalism. Night shift, Tuesday, for a year. Veronica typed it into her notes. Anything else? Yeah, when you're working maintenance, you don't get special treatment. You follow Tom Chen's directions. You do the actual work. You don't delegate or supervise or manage. You push the mop, empty the trash, clean the toilets, all of it. Understood. Cal studied her face. You're really going to do this? I am. Because you're right. I need to understand what I've been ignoring, And if spending 52 nights cleaning floors is what it takes to become the kind of leader this company deserves, then that's what I'll do. It's going to be humbling. Good. I need humbling. Veronica stood and extended her hand. Do we have a deal? Cal stood and shook her hand. We do. Welcome to the maintenance crew, Ms. Hale. I hope you like the smell of industrial cleaner. Veronica laughed despite herself. I'm sure I'll learn to love it. She left shortly after, driving home through the darkening evening with a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation churning in her stomach. She'd just committed to spending one night a week doing janitorial work. Her board would think she'd lost her mind. The press would have a field day, and she'd probably hate every second of it. But Cal was right. She needed to understand, needed to see the company from the bottom instead of the top, needed to learn what it felt like to be invisible so she'd never forget to see people again. The next morning, Veronica arrived at the office at 5:30 a.m. and went straight to the maintenance department. Tom Chen was just arriving for his shift, looking surprised to see her there. Ms. Hale? Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need to learn about your work, about what you need, what's working, what isn't. And I figured the best way to do that was to ask directly instead of assuming, I know. She pulled out her phone. Can we grab coffee and talk? My treat. Tom looked simultaneously wary and intrigued. You're actually serious about this? I am. Cal convinced me that I've been running this company from too much distance. Time to close that gap. They ended up in the break room, the one with the flickering lights that Veronica had promised to fix. She made a note to follow up on that immediately. Tom walked her through the maintenance operations with the careful precision of someone who wasn't sure whether this was a genuine conversation or a trap. But as Veronica asked questions and actually listened to the answers, Tom started to relax. He explained the equipment that was wearing out, the safety concerns nobody had addressed, the informal systems the maintenance crew had developed to work around inadequate resources. We make do, Tom said. But we shouldn't have to. Some of this stuff is basic. Better gloves for chemical handling, a lift system for heavy equipment instead of people throwing out their backs, radios that work in all areas of the facility instead of creating dead zones. Veronica took notes on everything. Costs? Maybe $20,000 for everything on my wish list, but it's never been a priority because maintenance isn't customer-facing. It's a priority now. Send me a full list with cost estimates. I'll approve it by end of week. Tom stared at her. Just like that? Just like that? And Tom? I'm sorry it took this long. You shouldn't have had to wait for a viral video for your CEO to care about your working conditions. Cal said you were trying to change. Guess he wasn't kidding. He wasn't, and I'm going to prove it. Veronica stood. Thank you for the conversation. I'll be back next week for another one. And starting next Tuesday night, I'll be joining your night crew for maintenance shifts, Cal's condition for accepting the director position. Tom's eyebrows shot up. He made you agree to work maintenance? He did, and he was right to. How else am I going to understand what your team deals with every day? Ms. Hale, no offense, but you're going to hate it. Probably, but that's kind of the point. Veronica smiled. See you next Tuesday, Tom. I'll try not to break anything expensive. She left him shaking his head in disbelief and headed up to her office where Marcus was waiting with the full list he'd promised. The list of everything Veronica had done over the past 2 years that needed addressing. It was 11 pages long. I told you it was extensive, Marcus said. Veronica sat down and started reading. Each item was dated, detailed, and devastating. Dismissive comments to employees, decisions made without consulting people who'd be affected. Promises broken because other priorities emerged. A comprehensive catalog of ways she'd failed to be the leader she should have been. By page 6, Veronica had tears in her eyes. By page 11, she felt like she'd been hit by a truck. How did I become this person? She asked quietly. Slowly. One small compromise at a time. One moment of impatience that became a pattern. One priority that overrode everything else until you forgot there were other things that mattered. Marcus sat down across from her. But here's the thing, you're reading that list. You're not getting defensive or making excuses. That's different from the person who did those things. It doesn't undo the damage. No, but acknowledgement is the first step toward repair. Marcus pulled out another folder. So here's what I suggest. We go through this list together. For each item, we identify who was affected and how. Then you personally apologize and, where possible, make amends, not a mass email. Individual conversations, real accountability. That's going to take months, probably, but you've got time. And more importantly, you've got motivation now. Use it. They spent the rest of the day working through the list, starting with the most recent and most egregious items. Each one made Veronica feel worse, but Marcus was relentless in his insistence that she face every mistake directly. This is what accountability looks like, he said. It's not comfortable, it's not quick, but it's necessary. By evening, Veronica had a plan. 37 people she needed to apologize to personally, 12 policies she needed to revise or eliminate, 6 systems she needed to rebuild from scratch to prevent the same problems from recurring. It was overwhelming and exhausting, and exactly what she needed to do. She left the office that night feeling battered but somehow lighter, as if acknowledging the weight she'd been carrying made it easier to bear. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cal. "Heard you had coffee with Tom this morning. Good start. Keep going." She typed back, planning to, "Thank you for not giving up on me." His response came a moment later. "Thank you for being willing to learn. See you Tuesday night. Bring work gloves." Veronica smiled despite her exhaustion. She had no idea what she was getting herself into with these maintenance shifts, but she knew it was necessary, knew it would change her in ways she couldn't predict. And for the first time in years, she was looking forward to becoming someone different, someone better. Someone who finally understood that respect wasn't about titles or positions or authority. It was about seeing people, all people, and treating them like they mattered. Because they did. Tuesday night arrived faster than Veronica had anticipated. She stood in the maintenance locker room at 9:45 p.m., wearing the blue uniform Tom had provided and staring at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was unfamiliar. No tailored suit, no designer heels, no armor of executive polish. Just a middle-aged woman in work clothes about to spend 8 hours cleaning floors. "You look terrified," Maria said from behind her. The older maintenance worker was changing into her own uniform, moving with the efficient economy of someone who'd done this thousands of times. "First night is always the hardest." "I feel ridiculous," Veronica admitted. "Good. Means you're taking it seriously." Maria closed her locker. "Tom told us you'd be working with us for a year. Most people figured you'd quit after one shift. I've got $20 says you make it 3 weeks. What's the over-under for the full year?" Nobody took that bet. Too unlikely. Maria smiled without cruelty. "No offense, Ms. Hale, but you're not built for this work." "Then I guess I'll have to rebuild myself." Veronica followed Maria out to the supply area where Tom was distributing assignments for the night. The crew was small, only 6 people for the entire facility on night shift. They looked at Veronica with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism to barely concealed amusement. Tom handed her a mop and bucket. "You're starting with floor detail in the main hangar. Standard cleaning protocol, sweep first, then mop, then detail work around equipment. Maria will show you the process. And Ms. Hale, we work as a team here. If you need help, ask. If you see someone else struggling, offer. That's how we survived the night." "Understood," Veronica said. The main hangar was cavernous and cold at night. The Phoenix had been moved to a testing facility, leaving only support equipment and storage. Maria demonstrated the proper technique for industrial mopping: long, even strokes, systematic coverage, attention to corners and edges that Veronica would never have noticed needed cleaning. "It's meditation," Maria said. "You can't think about anything else while you're doing it, or you miss spots. Your mind clears. Some people hate that. Some people need it." Veronica started mopping. Within 20 minutes, her shoulders ached. Within an hour, her back was screaming. The mop was heavier than it looked, the repetitive motion more exhausting than she'd imagined, and the floor was enormous, seeming to stretch endlessly in every direction. "How do you do this every night?" she gasped during a water break. "Practice," Maria said. "And ibuprofen. Lots of ibuprofen." She studied Veronica with frank assessment. "You're working too hard, trying to muscle through it instead of finding the rhythm. Watch." She demonstrated again, her movements fluid and efficient, conserving energy while maintaining effectiveness. Veronica tried to copy the technique and immediately felt the difference. Still exhausting, but sustainable. Better, Maria said. You'll get the hang of it. Eventually. They worked in silence for a while. The only sounds the swish of mops and the distant hum of ventilation systems. Veronica found herself falling into the rhythm Maria had described, her mind quieting, her awareness narrowing to just the immediate task. It was strange, uncomfortable, and oddly peaceful. Can I ask you something? Maria said after a while. Of course. Why are you really doing this? And don't give me corporate speak. I want the truth. Veronica paused her mopping. Because I forgot what it felt like to be invisible. I forgot that people who do work like this are still people with thoughts and lives and value. And I need to remember, viscerally, so I never forget again. Maria nodded slowly. Cal's idea? His condition for taking the job. Smart man. The smartest. He worked my shift for 6 years. Never complained, never acted like he was better than the work, never treated any of us like we were less than him. Maria's voice softened. When my son was in the hospital, Cal covered 3 of my shifts without being asked. When Tom's wife had surgery, Cal organized the whole crew to make sure Tom could take time off. He saw us. Really saw us. That's rare. I know. I'm starting to understand how rare. Then you're learning the right lesson. Maria resumed mopping. Keep going. You've got 7 more hours to get through. Those 7 hours were the longest of Veronica's life. After the hangar came the administrative offices, emptying trash, vacuuming, cleaning bathrooms that required her to scrub toilets with her own hands. Then the break rooms, the conference rooms, the executive floor where her own office sat dark and silent. Cleaning her own office was surreal. Standing there with a trash bag, emptying her own wastebasket, wiping down the desk where she made decisions about thousands of people's lives. From this angle, with the lights dim and the building empty, it all looked different, smaller, less significant. By 4 a.m., Veronica was exhausted in ways she hadn't experienced since college. Her body hurt everywhere. Her hands were raw despite the gloves, and she still had 2 hours of her shift remaining. Water, Tom said, appearing with bottles for the whole crew. They gathered in the break room, the one with the flickering lights that Veronica still hadn't fixed, she realized with shame. Good work tonight, everyone. Ms. Hale, you're keeping up better than I expected. I'm dying, Veronica said honestly. Yeah, but you're still here. That's something. Tom sat down with a groan. You know what the hardest part of this job is? It's not the physical work. It's the invisibility. You can clean a space perfectly, and the next morning people walk through it without noticing, without thinking about who did the work or how long it took or whether anyone cares. You're just expected to make things clean and then disappear. I never thought about it that way, Veronica said quietly. Nobody does, that's the point. Tom took a long drink of water. Cal was different. He'd leave notes sometimes. Thanks for the clean workspace, or you missed a spot by the 3rd workstation, just FYI. Little things that showed he noticed, that we existed to him. He's good at seeing people. He is. Question is whether you'll be too, once this year is up and you go back to your office. It was a fair challenge. Veronica met Tom's eyes. I guess we'll find out together. Hold me accountable. All of you. If I start slipping back into old patterns, call me on it. That's a dangerous offer, Maria said. We've got a lot of opinions about how this place should run. Good. I want to hear them. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of exhaustion and detail work. When 6 a.m. finally arrived, Veronica felt like she'd run a marathon. She changed back into her regular clothes with trembling hands, every muscle in her body protesting. Tom caught her before she left. You did okay tonight. Better than okay, actually. Most executives would have quit by midnight. I made a commitment. I keep my promises. Veronica managed a tired smile. Same time next week? Same time. And Ms. Hale? The break room lights. You said you'd fix them. I did say that, didn't I? Veronica pulled out her phone and sent a message to facilities management. Consider it done. By end of business today. She drove home as the sun was rising, collapsed into bed still wearing half her clothes, and slept for 6 hours straight. When she woke, her Her entire body was one massive ache. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Marcus and a text from Cal. Heard you survived your first shift. Proud of you. Welcome to the real world. She smiled despite the pain and dragged herself to the shower. By the time she made it to the office that afternoon, she felt barely human, but she also felt something else, humbler, more grounded, more aware of the privilege she'd been taking for granted. Marcus took one look at her and laughed. You look like you got hit by a truck. I feel worse than that. Veronica lowered herself carefully into a chair. How do people do that work every single night? Because they don't have a choice, because bills need paying and families need feeding, and sometimes you do hard work because it's what's available. Marcus handed her coffee. Learning experience. Profound one. She sipped the coffee gratefully. The break room lights are fixed, by the way, and I want a full ergonomic assessment of all maintenance equipment. If we can make that work less physically punishing, we should. I'll add it to the list. The list had become their shared project, a living document of changes needed, promises to keep, and people to make amends to. They worked through it systematically over the following weeks, with Veronica personally reaching out to everyone she'd wronged. Some conversations were harder than others. The engineer she'd publicly humiliated for questioning a design decision. The project manager she'd blamed for delays that weren't his fault. The administrative assistant she'd fired without warning during a budget crisis. Each conversation required Veronica to sit with her own shame and offer genuine apology without excuses or justifications. Some people accepted graciously, some needed time, and some simply acknowledged the apology without forgiveness, which Veronica learned to accept as their right. Meanwhile, Cal was transforming the flight operations department. He'd brought in a cross-functional team approach that had engineers, maintenance staff, and pilots working together from the design phase forward. The Phoenix's control lag issues were being methodically addressed, not through top-down mandates, but through collaborative problem-solving that incorporated insights from everyone who touched the aircraft. This is how it should have been done from the start, Derek told Veronica during a progress meeting 6 weeks after the demonstration flight. Cal's got maintenance techs identifying potential failure points before they become problems. He's got pilots providing real-world feedback on control responses. It's messy and democratic and about 10 times more effective than our old process. How much longer until we can begin production testing? 3 months, maybe 4. But when we do, this aircraft is going to be genuinely exceptional, not just functional. Exceptional. The board meeting that followed was tense but productive. James Whitmore had softened considerably after watching the Phoenix demonstration video approximately 15 times, according to sources. He still asked hard questions, but now they were legitimate concerns about production timelines and market viability rather than political maneuvering. The Phoenix program continues, Whitmore announced formally. Pending final testing and certification, we're approved for initial production run of 50 units, contingent, of course, on meeting military specifications and delivery schedules. Veronica felt a weight lift that she'd been carrying for months. Thank you. The team has done remarkable work. Credit where it's due, Whitmore said. Colonel Grant's assessment was convincing, and your recent operational changes have been noted. The facility morale surveys are showing significant improvement. We have a long way to go, but we're committed to the process. After the meeting, Veronica found Cal in the test bay, reviewing modifications to the Phoenix's control systems with a team of engineers who were actually listening to him instead of just nodding politely. Heard the board approve production, he said without looking up from the technical drawings. They did. Thanks to your demonstration and technical evaluation. Thanks to your engineers doing excellent work. I just helped them prove it. Cal marked something on the drawings. How are the maintenance shifts going? Exhausting, humbling, necessary. Veronica had completed 8 shifts now, and each one taught her something new about the facility, the people, and herself. Maria thinks I might actually make it the full year. She told me she's impressed. That's high praise from Maria. I owe her and Tom and everyone on that crew more than I can express. They've been patient with me when they had every right not to be. Cal finally looked up. That's because they see you trying. People are remarkably forgiving when effort is genuine. He rolled up the drawings. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her to a section of the facility she rarely visited, the employee common area that maintenance staff used during breaks. It had been transformed since her first night shift. New furniture, better lighting, a kitchen area with modern appliances, and bulletin boards covered with photos and announcements. The maintenance crew did this, Veronica asked, with budget approval from facilities management, which was approved by you, apparently, though you probably don't remember signing the request. Cal smiled. They wanted to create a space that felt like community, somewhere they could actually relax instead of just survive breaks. It's wonderful. It's a start, but here's the important part. Cal pointed to a large board near the entrance covered in handwritten notes. This is the suggestion system the crew created. Anonymous submissions for facility improvements, safety concerns, operational issues. And look at the responses. Veronica read through the notes. Each suggestion had a response from management, sometimes Cal, sometimes Derek, sometimes department heads. But every single one had been addressed, either with action taken or an explanation of why it couldn't be implemented immediately. You're actually listening to them, she said. We're actually listening. You approved every resource request that came through. You changed policies that needed changing. You showed up for those cross-department meetings I suggested, even when it was inconvenient. Cal met her eyes. You're doing the work, Veronica, the real work, not just the performative kind. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does, but it's more than most leaders ever attempt. He gestured back toward the main facility. Come on, I want you to see the Phoenix's latest modification. The testing facility housed the upgraded prototype, now featuring the refined control systems that Cal's team had been developing. It looked almost identical to the original, but Veronica could see subtle differences in the cockpit instrumentation and control interfaces. We've reduced the control lag from 0.3 seconds to 0.08, Cal explained. Almost imperceptible, even at high speed. The fiber optic synchronization is clean, the hydraulics are responsive, and the redundancy systems actually function as intended instead of creating interference. Can I see it fly? Better, you can fly it. Veronica stared at him. What? You heard me? I've been training civilian certification pilots on the Phoenix's systems. You're the CEO. You should understand how it handles. Cal smiled at her expression. Don't worry, I'll be in the co-pilot seat, and we'll start with basic maneuvers. No combat aerobatics on your first flight. 20 minutes later, Veronica was strapped into the pilot seat, wearing a flight helmet and trying to remember how to breathe normally. Cal sat beside her, calm and reassuring, walking her through the pre-flight checklist. Control column is straightforward. Collective for altitude, cyclic for direction, pedals for tail rotor. The Phoenix is responsive, but forgiving. She'll tell you what she needs if you listen. I can't believe I'm doing this, Veronica said. You wanted to understand your company from every angle. This is part of it. Cal's voice was steady in her headset. Take it slow. Just feel how she moves. Veronica followed his instructions, bringing the Phoenix to a hover with hands that shook slightly from nerves rather than exhaustion this time. The helicopter responded smoothly, the refined controls making it almost intuitive. She could feel the difference from Cal's descriptions. The immediate responsiveness, the precision, the way the aircraft seemed to anticipate her intentions. That's it, Cal said. Now just a gentle forward movement, nothing aggressive. She nudged the cyclic forward, and the Phoenix glided ahead like a dancer. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely unlike anything she'd experienced before. For 15 minutes, Cal coached her through basic maneuvers, forward flight, turns, altitude changes, another hover. When they finally landed, Veronica was shaking with adrenaline and something close to joy. That was incredible, she breathed. That's what your company built, Cal said. That's what's possible when people work together instead of against each other. When expertise is valued regardless of where it comes from. When the goal is excellence instead of just profit. Veronica climbed out of the cockpit on unsteady legs. Thank you for teaching me, for not giving up on any of us. I didn't do anything except show you what was already here. You just had to learn how to see it. The following months brought continued change. The Phoenix moved through certification testing with results that exceeded expectations. Military procurement officials were impressed enough to expand the initial order to 75 units. Defense contractors who'd been watching Hale Aerospace skeptically started reconsidering their assessments. But more importantly, the culture inside the facility continued evolving. The cross-department meetings became standard practice. The suggestion system expanded to all divisions. Promotion decisions started reflecting actual competence rather than political favor. And slowly, systematically, the company transformed from a place people endured to a place they chose. Veronica kept her maintenance shifts throughout it all. Every Tuesday night, without fail, she showed up in her blue uniform and cleaned floors beside Maria, Tom, and the rest of the crew. Some nights were harder than others. Some nights she wondered if she was crazy for continuing, but every night taught her something essential about the work, the people, and the privilege she'd been abusing. By month 6, Maria admitted that she'd lost her bet. By month 9, Tom stopped treating Veronica like a visiting executive and started treating her like a colleague. And by month 11, Veronica realized she'd actually started looking forward to her Tuesday shifts, not despite the hard work, but because of the clarity it brought. The final board meeting of the year was a triumph. The Phoenix had passed all certification requirements. The initial production run was fully funded and ahead of schedule. And perhaps most remarkably, employee retention rates had improved by 32%, while productivity had increased across all departments. Whatever you're doing, Whitmore said during the meeting, keep doing it. This is the kind of performance we needed to see. After the meeting, Veronica found Cal in his office, a real office now, with windows and a door and technical drawings covering every available surface. He was reviewing pilot training protocols with Rebecca, who'd started consulting for the company on employment contracts and labor practices. Congratulations on the board results, Rebecca said, looking up from her laptop. Sounds like the Phoenix program is secure. It is, thanks in no small part to your father's expertise and willingness to put up with my initial incompetence. She's being modest, Cal said. The Phoenix succeeds because the entire team made it work. I just helped coordinate. You revolutionized how we operate, Veronica corrected. And you did it by insisting we treat people with respect. That's not coordination, that's leadership. Rebecca smiled. He's good at that, though it took him a while to remember. Hey, Cal protested mildly. Dad, you spent 8 years pushing a mop because you forgot you had value beyond your ability to solve problems for other people. Don't pretend you weren't struggling. Cal's expression softened. Fair point. Veronica watched the easy affection between them and felt something shift. In the year since Cal had flown the Phoenix, he'd changed too. The careful invisibility was gone, replaced by confidence that was grounded rather than performative. He'd rebuilt his relationship with Rebecca through weekly dinners and honest conversations about grief and loss and moving forward. He'd become genuinely integral to the company's operations, not as a figurehead, but as someone whose expertise shaped real decisions. And Veronica had changed alongside him. The CEO who'd mocked a janitor out of cruel desperation was gone, replaced by someone who understood that leadership meant service, that power meant responsibility. That respect had to be earned and maintained through consistent action. My last maintenance shift is next Tuesday, Veronica said. 52 weeks. Full year completed. Are you going to miss it? Cal asked. Honestly, yes. Not the physical exhaustion, but the perspective. The reminder that I'm not above anyone else. That we're all just people trying to do good work. She paused. I'm thinking about continuing, maybe one shift a month, just to maintain the connection. Maria, who'd appeared in the doorway, said, You're serious? Completely, if you'll have me. Ms. Hale, you've scrubbed more toilets this year than most executives scrub in a lifetime. You've earned your place on the crew. Maria smiled. Besides, someone needs to reach the high shelves. Tom and I are getting too old for that. They all laughed, and Veronica felt the warmth of genuine inclusion. Not because of her title or authority, but because she'd done the work. Because she'd shown up consistently. Because she'd proven that change was more than just words. The final Tuesday shift was celebratory. The maintenance crew had brought cake, and someone had made a banner that said, 52 weeks, she actually did it. Tom presented Veronica with a framed photograph of the crew, everyone in their blue uniforms smiling like they meant it. For your office, Tom said. So you remember where you came from. I could never forget, Veronica said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you, all of you, for teaching me, for tolerating me, for helping me become better. You did the work, Maria said simply. We just witnessed it. That Saturday, the company held a celebration for the Phoenix program's success. The entire facility was invited: engineers, maintenance staff, administrative personnel, everyone who'd contributed. It was loud and chaotic and genuinely joyful, with none of the forced corporate cheer that had characterized previous company events. Cal found Veronica standing near the Phoenix, which had been brought to the main hangar for display. The helicopter gleamed under the lights, looking every bit the masterpiece it had become. "Thinking about your first flight?" he asked. "Thinking about everything. About how close we came to losing all of this because I couldn't see past my own fear and pride." "But you didn't lose it. You learned instead." Cal stood beside her, both of them looking at the Phoenix. "That's the difference between failure and growth. Failure is permanent. Growth is just failure plus willingness to change." "When did you become a philosopher?" "About 16 years ago, when my wife died, and I had to figure out how to keep living. Turns out suffering either breaks you or teaches you. I got lucky with the teaching part." Veronica thought about her own year of learning. The maintenance shifts, the apologies, the systematic dismantling of the person she'd been, and careful reconstruction of someone better. It had been painful and humbling and absolutely necessary. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting me stay broken, for pushing me to see what I was missing, for believing I could change even when I didn't believe it myself." "You're welcome. But Veronica, you did the actual changing. I just held up a mirror." Rebecca approached with Marcus, both of them carrying champagne glasses and looking pleased. "Dad, they're asking for you to say something. Apparently everyone wants to hear from the janitor who saved the company." "I'm a test pilot now," Cal protested. "You'll always be the janitor to the internet," Marcus said cheerfully. "The video has 17 million views. You're viral forever." Cal groaned but allowed himself to be led to the makeshift stage where Derek was attempting to get everyone's attention. The crowd quieted as Cal took the microphone, looking uncomfortable with the attention but handling it with characteristic grace. "I'm not good at speeches," he began. "I'm better at flying and cleaning floors, both of which require more doing than talking. But since everyone's looking at me expectantly, I'll say this. A year ago, I was invisible. And a year ago, this company was heading toward failure. Both of those things changed because people were willing to look honestly at themselves and each other. Because Veronica Hale decided that being right was less important than being good. Because this entire team remembered that building something worthwhile matters more than protecting egos or playing politics." He paused, looking around at the assembled crowd. "The Phoenix flies because of all of you. Because engineers listened to maintenance staff. Because pilots shared real feedback without fear. Because everyone from the night cleaning crew to the executive suite started treating each other like human beings instead of job titles. That's the actual victory here. The helicopter is just proof of concept." The crowd applauded and Cal handed the microphone back to Derek with visible relief. But as he stepped down, people approached him, engineers wanting to discuss technical details, maintenance staff thanking him for the raises and improved conditions, younger employees asking advice about their careers. He was no longer invisible. He was central, valued, seen. Veronica watched it all with something close to pride. Not pride in herself, but pride in what they'd built together. In what was possible when people chose connection over hierarchy. As the evening wound down and people began filtering out, Veronica found herself alone with the Phoenix one final time. She ran her hand along the fuselage, feeling the smooth composite material, thinking about everything this aircraft represented: risk and innovation and the willingness to try even when success seemed impossible. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Cal said, appearing beside her one last time. "It is. Everything we hoped it would be. Better, actually, because it came from collaboration instead of competition." Cal smiled. "Your company is going to do remarkable things, Veronica. Not because of the Phoenix, but because you finally built a culture where remarkable things are possible. We built it, together, all of us." "Fair enough." Cal extended his hand. "Thank you for learning, for changing, for proving that people can become better versions of themselves when they're willing to do the work." Veronica shook his hand, feeling the full weight of the journey they'd shared. "Thank you for teaching me, for not giving up, for showing me what real leadership looks like." "Anytime. though hopefully next time without the viral humiliation part. They both laughed, and Veronica realized that she'd never felt more grounded, more present, more genuinely connected to her purpose than she did in this moment. Standing in a quiet hangar beside a man who'd taught her to see people, looking at an aircraft that represented possibility. The Phoenix had flown. But more importantly, they all had, rising from the ashes of old patterns and old cruelties, learning to value substance over status, choosing to see each other clearly, honestly, completely. It wasn't a perfect ending. There would be more challenges, more mistakes, more opportunities to forget and need reminding, but that was okay. Growth wasn't a destination, it was a practice, a daily choice to be better than yesterday. And as Veronica drove home that night, she looked at the framed photograph of her maintenance crew sitting on the passenger seat, looked at their genuine smiles and work-worn hands and the dignity they carried regardless of their job titles. She'd started this journey by trying to save her career. She'd ended it by finding something infinitely more valuable, the understanding that the people we overlook are the ones who hold everything together. That respect isn't about what someone does, but about recognizing the inherent worth in every person. That leadership means serving, not commanding. Cal had been right about everything, especially the most important lesson, that sometimes the person pushing the mop knows more than the person in the corner office, and that wisdom isn't about credentials or titles or viral fame. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, and never, ever taking that sight for granted. Veronica had spent 8 years walking past Cal Grant without noticing, but she'd never make that mistake again. Not with him, not with anyone. Because now she understood what it meant to be invisible, and she'd spent the rest of her life making sure no one under her leadership ever felt that way again. The Phoenix flew. The company thrived, and everyone who'd been overlooked finally got to be seen. That was the real victory, the only one that mattered, the ending that was really a beginning, and it was enough.